TV.
We wish to acknowledge that Canada is on Turtle Island, which is a vast territory of traditional landscapes of many Indigenous peoples who over time have occupied and made this land their home from time immemorial. The original peoples who began their journey taking those early footsteps in our creation stories across this land, some came from the stars and others came from the sky. And there were those who came from underground, but there's something important that they all share. And that is their stories of arrival to this land we call home, on Turtle Island. Nindinawe Magani Duck, which means all my relations, which means we are all related.
The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk Politics. Our guest this week is Oshawa MPP Jennifer French. Happy New Year. It's been quite a while since you and I have sat down and had a chat.
It has been long overdue, and I'm glad to see you and glad to have a chance to talk about some important issues across our community.
So many things to talk about. Perhaps let's just start with your private member's bill, which passed its second reading just before Christmas, did it
Yes.
not?
Yep, it was one of the things that we did before the winter recess, that we had the second reading debate of Bill 15, which is the Fairness for Road Users Act. I had reintroduced it 3 times, finally got the chance to debate it. I did a lot of work in behind the scenes with ministry and folks to try and ensure that they understood what we were hoping to accomplish. It's been a project that's been like 20 years in the making, and we were successful in it passing. And I'm not often optimistic that I'll get what I want from government, but I do think that there's a chance for this to go to committee, hash it out a bit and make it law so that we can make things a bit better for families that have really had a tough time of things in the event of the unimaginable happening on our roadways. So it's kind of about remedy for, instead of adding insult to illness or insult to injury, excuse me, this hopefully will make things better when bad things happen.
Okay, so let's go through why this bill was so important and what changes will happen if it becomes law.
I'll do my best to distill it down, but it came to me because I serve the province as the critic for infrastructure, transportation, and highways, and this is a transportation-specific bill. So advocates like from the Bikers' Rights Organization and cyclists, folks who are vulnerable on our roadways, have been championing this need for a long time, that if someone is killed or catastrophically injured on the roads, unfortunately, if they're charged under the Highway Traffic Act, so think of an improper left turn or a U-turn or something like that, the judge is only able to reach for a maximum penalty of $500 fine. And sometimes, we've heard a number of times from judges, that might be insufficient based on what has happened in that case. And so this adds different penalties, increases the maximum, and also gives them different tools, if it's pulling a license or things like that. So it really is at sentencing for judges to have more opportunities to not add insult to injury at sentencing with the families. So it's unfortunately an after the fact, but when we're talking about vulnerable road users, there are a whole slate of things that can make them safer and make things more fair. So we're hoping that it'll go to committee and be remedied.
So 2022 ended and 2023 is starting off on a very positive note for you in regards to Bill 15.
That was a win for many folks who have been fighting this fight for a while, and every day you can read in the paper about a family's suffering and then something that it doesn't seem just. So we're hoping that we can move forward and find a little bit of justice in a terrible circumstance. So that was a positive, yes.
So on another level of something that just doesn't seem just, let's talk about, do you want to start with Bill 23 or Bill 39?
For us in Durham Region, those two things feel quite connected. So I'm happy to go with either of those.
Okay, let's start off with Bill 39, which, as you have said, really is the crux of it is putting our green belt at risk. Why do you have concerns with Bill 39 then?
Well, Bill 39, a lot of folks in Toronto have, that their focus on Bill 39 was the no longer the need to have a majority for some council votes, right? So the Democratic pieces are highly problematic, but Durham specifically, what we're interested in and what we are hearing about from our constituents is the repeal of the Duffins Rouge Agricultural Preserve Act, or the DRAP Act. That's if folks have kind of been following along, those protections were to protect farmland within the Greenbelt, but protect some of that amazing Class A farmland, that prime farmland, in perpetuity. So a lot of folks in the broader Durham region fought to have those protections in place, thought that it was safe. And then Bill 39 said, nope, just kidding. They were repealing that protective act, repealing the DRAP Act. What that means is Bill 23 that said, that kind of goes after the Greenbelt lands across the province. It made that particular land in our neck of the woods beside, the Rouge National Park and our prime farmland in Durham. It made that land now available to be pulled out of the Greenbelt. So those two things, unfortunately, kind of work hand in hand, but repealed protections that were put in place in perpetuity. And I mean, there are a lot of arguments to be made, whether environmental, or we're talking about, the growth in the food that we're going to require, that we won't have access to that farmland, but also economic, that land was public and now it's being sold. Oh man, making some folks very, very rich, but it's not a deal that's in the best interest of the public. And so you've seen actually all three opposition parties have written to the Auditor General to investigate that specifically. So there's a lot of attention, and it all kind of fits together, and it all happened really fast while people were, focusing on newly elected councils and it's just, there's almost too much to keep track of these days, but it's ugly, and it's a fight worth fighting.
Yeah, talk about being confusing. When it comes to all these bills and their numbers, every bill is just so complex, and there are so many aspects to it. It's hard to keep it straight. Before we focus on Bill 23, which was dealt with housing and making that green land available for housing, I just want to ask you, in regards to Bill 39 with the Strong Mayors Act and removing the need for the majority, some have said that flies in the face of local democracy. How do you see it?
Imagine that you only require, 33% to have a, what is that? Are we going to call it a majority now? Majority is supposed to be more than half, and now that's no longer required. And the strong mayors, I mean, that's something we're all watching with interest, of course, but the ability to veto, decisions, and that you only need a third of council to make decisions that have a huge impact on all of the people who voted for folks to represent them. It doesn't just fly in the face of democracy. It punches democracy in the face. Like this is brutal. And I would say the start of more to come. That's what I've seen from this government, and I certainly don't trust them, but folks can watch for themselves.
All right, let's move on to Bill 23, which was designed I guess, to put somewhat of a dent in our housing shortage. But many of the local mayors that we've spoken to, once Bill 23 was announced, quite frankly, it looked like they were in shock, because part of this bill is limiting the amount of money they can get from developers in development charges, which they say was essential for meeting their budgets. And you've had some conversations with mayors.
I've been having conversations with municipal leaders far beyond Durham. Like, this is something that, yes, is a shock. And I'll also remind folks of the timeline. Like, Bill 23 was introduced, debated, and basically passed before the new councils, after a municipal election, had even been sworn in. Like, this was all done not a sort of the cover of darkness, but just quick, so that it's a done deal before the new folks get in, right? And before they know what hit them. So you've got new councils whose first order of business has basically had to be this, to try and make sense of it, to put all of their fantastic, personnel and staff on it. And they're just, from what I've heard, can't keep up with all of the changes. So Bill 23, yes, limits their ability to collect development charges. That is one piece of it, but that's a significant piece, right? That's revenue coming in, but also they're supposed to provide services. So if this bill were about housing, you'd want those houses to be serviced. Look, I'm going to say we need housing, but we need them within municipal boundaries. We need them to have access to transit and services and schools and jobs. I don't believe that this is, like, they're saying that this area, the green belt, is needed to build housing. Malarkey. What we are hearing from municipalities who have been very diligent for years in doing their growth plans, none of them have called for that land. That land is not required. They were able to do it and provide for the growth that is coming within their boundaries, using the services. And this is a plan for sprawl and a plan for profit. But anyway, I digress. The Bill 23, there's a lot to it. So yes, development charges, but the conservation authorities. So in our area, we are so lucky to have the Central Lake Ontario Conservation Authority. They do fantastic work. Some of that is around, flood mitigation, lots of community programs and whatnot. But a big part of what they do has been to work out deals with municipalities and provide expertise on their plans, right? If the municipality says, hey, Cloca, can you take a look at this plan and make sure it's not going to be underwater in a couple of years, or do you see any problems? They use municipalities have deals with Cloca to put eyes on things, and now that's no longer allowed. Nobody that I have talked to has asked for this, but municipalities are still required to review these plans. And how are they going to hire that type of planning expertise? Where will they find them, even if they can, right? And so there's a huge cost and burden, and it doesn't make any sense. So it won't streamline the process. Like it was just like a weird poke in the eye to the conservation authorities. And I gotta wonder who's asking for it. Nobody who's working on actual, planning and development at the municipal level.
But with the less money coming in and the more responsibilities, and now have to paying for that kind of expertise, how are they going to meet those budgets? Because municipalities cannot run a deficit, correct? So it's going to fall on the taxpayer. That's what the mayors are telling us. Well,
and I hope that municipalities put that clearly on the bill, that this is, a direct result of Bill 23, frankly, because people don't yet know what exactly it will look like. Will it be a limitation on services and programs? What is going to have to go to make up for this? Or are they just going to increase what they have to ask the taxpayer for? Another concerning thing is that the province has been eyeing, and if you listen to them debate in the legislature, they have their eyes on reserves, and they make it sound like municipalities and regional municipalities have these huge piggy banks of just, money to shake, and to party with. And the thing is, those reserves are very thoughtfully and accountably, earmarked. Like they are for upcoming infrastructure projects. They are for the smaller municipalities. Like when you look at the region, we have reserves because we have responsible government. So if the provincial government is eyeing those reserves and expecting that to pay for the new sewage pipes that, of all of York and that area, all of their, can I say crap on TV? Literally.
You just did.
Oops. But we're supposed to pay for that and figure it out. And I think that they're going to point to our reserves and just expect us to cover that. And reserves are not extra money. They are budgeted and earmarked. Anyway, it's
Okay.
a heck of a mess.
I'm going to stop you there. We're going to take a quick break. More of our conversation with Oshawa MPP Jennifer French after this.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Everybody knows not to drink and drive, but some people still think it's okay to take drugs and drive. Police have the authority, the ability, and the tools to determine if drivers are impaired by legal or illegal drugs. And because drug-impaired drivers can pose just as great a risk as drunk drivers, they face the same penalties, like the loss of their driver's license, a criminal record, fines, and more. A message from the RCMP, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, and Arrive Alive, Drive Sober.
This is Rogers TV.
And welcome back to Talk Politics. Our guest this week is Oshawa MPP Jennifer French. Now, when we went to break, we were talking about reserves, and you were referring to a sewage pipeline. I mean, for years now, Durham has accepted York waste, but what's different now?
There was a potential plan on the horizon that has been, in the works. I guess it was called the Upper York Sewage Solution Plan, and folks may or may not remember that. That's been for years. That program was just nixed, for better or for worse. And in Bill 23, that was a part of this bill, was specific just to us, to Durham and York, is that the province did make a decision, and that all that sewage is going to be routed down and through our neck of the woods and into Lake Ontario, as opposed to Lake Simcoe. So that decision was quietly made in Bill 23. Working with, the region and folks, we don't have the answers on how that'll be paid for, what that will look like. And I do get twitchy when that information isn't forthcoming. The government's made a major infrastructure decision that should be a public project, but has just kind of shoved it to York and Durham. And I think at this point is saying, well, you guys work it out. You guys have worked out other arrangements. So that's a short version. And it's new, right? So we'll all be following this. And as infrastructure critic and an interested party in Durham Region, I'm hoping to have more to offer soon on that. But people can pay attention to that, and that line goes right through the land that has been carved out of the Greenbelt for development. And the particular developer, we're basically going to be running that pipeline right through all of his land and servicing it for him. So a lot of money to be made by very rich folks. And hopefully this will be in the best interest of the public, but I can't see how.
Okay, let's move on to healthcare. Recently, we heard in the news, making headlines, an internal Ministry of Health document that was leaked showed that shortages of nurses and PSWs have become worse due to the caps on wages, thanks to Bill 124.
Yeah,
the government has said, no, that's not the case. What are your thoughts on this?
I'd say that Premier Ford's been gaslighting us. He's saying, oh, it's not that bad. Don't worry about it. It's not a thing. Yes, it is a thing. And it continues to be, it continues to be a real problem for folks across sectors. So we'll stay focused on healthcare, but, Bill 124, everyone has been saying, anyone who's interested in healthcare has been saying that this is a suppression tactic. It's a suppression of wages, but it's also keeping people at a level where they are forced to look elsewhere. And so we have been bleeding healthcare workers as a result. As we've seen nurses leave and go to private agencies. And actually talking to the folks at Lake Ridge Health, they have been over a barrel, right? They're not allowed to pay their nurses competitive wages. They've had this foot on their head that they haven't been able to pay competitive wages, but they're essentially being fleeced by the private agencies that they're able to pay them far more, and basically being held hostage. And the hospitals and anyone has been saying, let us bargain with our employees, let us pay them what they're worth, let us retain them, keep them on staff, and so that's a local piece. But I think anyone who's got public sector workers in their family has been hearing about Bill 124. So
I also want to ask you, you were saying that your office has been getting many calls about a local clinic not accepting patients.
There are a few local private clinics. I think you're referring to the Glacier Clinic, but also some of the Oshawa Clinic group. And we've been hearing from patients who have seen posted on the door that unless you have a family doctor, there are limitations now, might be certain days or hours. I'm not going to quote that exactly because it's different at each one. We, as an office, have reached out to the clinics and have been able to talk to some folks who've explained that, that the caps that are incurred by the Ministry of Health are making it so that they cannot see the number of patients that is needed by our community. So we reached out to the Ministry of Health and got a really quick answer that didn't say too much, but we've started, we've put it on their radar to try and come up with a solution, because I don't have to tell you, everyone in Oshawa deserves access to healthcare. So we're working in our capacity to try and figure out what mistake has been made or what the problem is, and see if we can't remedy it. But people need family doctors, right? Like, this is a thing that there's the private clinics, that's one part of it, but people who don't have family doctors.
Then where are they supposed to go if the private clinics aren't accepting them?
Well, and that's the exact question, is how, and also how do we get people family doctors? So there's a shortage of doctors, we know that, and this is a multi-pronged approach. And we as the opposition, but sort of we as broader society have been calling on this government, figure it out, and work with different folks and their recommendations to keep doctors here, keep nurses and PSWs employed within our public sector, and as we see more privatization of healthcare, like the Premier's announcements the last few days, like, who is he kidding? This is attacking universal healthcare and privatizing it and selling it off for parts. I think that's been part of their plan, but that will not improve access for you and me and our neighbors. It will, unfortunately, it will be pulling more healthcare workers from our hospital system, into different, private surgery clinics, if that's what he's going to follow through on that, and different clinics. We need to see more public healthcare and less private profit, because certainly everywhere we look, we need to see better outcomes and healthier community members.
Okay, we just have about 3 minutes left, but I also want to ask you about the Premier's announcement that will now allow pharmacists a little more freedom to write prescriptions, refill prescriptions. From a convenience standpoint, great news. Do you see that, though, as all of it in the positive column, or do you have some concerns?
Well, it's something that it is a very good way for Ontarians to access medication for minor ailments. And anyone you talk to on the street knows that having better access to healthcare is a good move. But I would say it also needs to be partnered with, because it can't be a replacement for folks seeing seeing a primary physician and seeing that, a primary doctor. Many don't have that. So this is one piece to the accessing, healthcare services or, for these minor ailments. But back to what I just said, we need more family doctors, and people need access to them too. So this cannot be a replacement. The government needs to be a part of a broader strategy. So.
And will it really have any effect on backlogs in emergency department?
I wouldn't connect it to the emergency department, but I would say that, pharmacists do have expertise, and if we're giving people access to more care, good, but I don't see how that's a part of the emergency room solution, and that is a whole other conversation, which I'd be glad to have anytime.
Okay, and so as we wrap up the show, we've got just about a minute left. Let's stop on a positive note. You started 2023 with your community skate.
Yeah, so fun.
You took the event outdoors.
Well,
and had a grand time.
We had a grand time. It was indoors, but it was cold enough to be outside. We were at Harmon Park Arena in the South End, met lots of new folks and families. It was the weekend right before back to school, so a lot of families looking for fun things to do with kids. So we had skating and cider and a good hop-in playlist and a photo booth. And honestly, it was such a good time. And I didn't fall. And I managed, we had fun. Everyone who came, I think, had a great time. So it was a real positive. Okay. And on that, we are out of time. Oshawa MPP Jennifer French, thank you so much once again for joining us. Well, thank you for having me. And I hope everyone stays safe and takes care in the early start to this new year. That's it for this week's edition of Talk Politics. On behalf of all of us here at Rogers TV, thanks for joining us. Until next time, bye for now.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Ever wonder what stood right behind me 150 years ago? Here in Pickering, at the northwest side of Brocken Highway 7, stood the Brome Central Hotel. Today, this historic commercial enterprise is housed here at the Pickering Museum Village. Originally a home, this two-story building became a temperance hotel in 1850.
We've prepared your usual private room.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure I'll sleep soundly tonight.
It was a resting place for travelers, and for 2 shillings and 6 pence, it also served as a meeting place for local council.
Ladies, the Township Council will be meeting very soon. We should retire.
Located at the epicenter of the township, the hotel was witness to a lot of the laws and infrastructure decisions that made Pickering what it is today.